Welcome, everybody, to the Pro Wrestling Wire podcast. A very special guest here today, Jody Simon, a.k.a. Joe Malenko. Thank you today for coming and talking with me.
Oh, no problem. My pleasure.
Thank you.
I figured, both Joe Malenko and Jody Simon would come today. I'm waiting for Jody Simon here, but Malenko's on for now. I think Jody
Yeah.
the bathroom. Jody's getting older, and he's got to pee like 15 times a day, so he might step back in.
If that happens, yes, I'm feeling it. So, yeah. So, the first part I want to start is obviously your father's a legendary professional wrestler. So, what was it like growing up with such a legendary wrestler as a dad?
He was he was he was an interesting guy.
Yeah.
So first and foremost, he wrestled from the time, before I was born. He started in the mid-50s. And he
Yep.
was in New York. But when you're born into a family and your dad does whatever he does, he's just your dad. Later, it's not till later on when you really start to understand the uh,
Hmm.
the notoriety, at least on
Right.
a local level. You got to remember back when he started, it was the regional efforts, the days of the promotions, the regional promotions, and so his fame, his notoriety was in pockets around the country based on where he was plying his trade. So he was up in New York when we were kids, and then we traveled. We were in San Francisco. We traveled to Omaha, Nebraska. We were in Texas. We were in North Carolina and Tennessee, Knoxville territory, down here in Florida. So making the rounds of the territories and the territory days. So you understood at some level that your dad was different because people would come up to him on the streets and say, "Hey, hey, oh Malenko, how you doing, man? Wrestling's fake, right?" um, but just short of that, he was just my dad. He was a very loving. He had a temper and a half, but he was a very loving, very affectionate guy. Had no problem showing affection, which I'm a touchy-feely guy myself. It's all that. It's that love language stuff, right? Our love language is touch. So yeah, he was my pop. I called him Pop. He was always my pop.
Yep.
Used to irritate the crap out of me because he'd call me 5, 6 times a day and tell me the same thing. And then it's that old thing as you get older and your parents pass. Once my dad was gone, you sit here and you think, man, I'd give an arm for him to call me one more time and annoy me.
Yeah.
But he was
I
just
lost my mom. Yeah, I lost my mom 13 years ago, and I know exactly like the feeling that you're talking about. I think about her every day and just wish I could talk to her just one more time.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Special stuff. People don't realize that whole live for today thing means something that is bigger than they understand. A lot of people don't want to do that. They want to focus in on the past. They want to worry about what they're doing tomorrow, and
Right.
they pass so much stuff. I learned through mainly through the business because as I was a younger kid, I was already around a lot of older guys, and I got attached to a lot of these guys. They were all like father figures to me because I was a yeah, I was a pretty nice kid. I could be a pain in the ass like all kids, but I just had a lot of these guys who really kind of took me under the wing, and so I watched a lot of them pass, and I had a hard time with death, so I wouldn't, I didn't want to be around them when I knew that they were going, and it was only until later in life that I realized that you're shortchanging yourself, and you shortchange them also. They needed that time to look at you and go, hey, I want you to know I love you and take care of yourself, and I'll be watching over you, sort of thing. So that's an awful maudlin way to start to start a podcast. Yes, death.
Yeah.
Death with Joe Malenko.
We've had some random conversations. I mean, we've gone from talking wrestling to pizza for an hour. It's
Yeah.
just that's how the podcasting game works, I guess.
I don't
Listen,
know. I'll never talk pizza because when you talk pizza, you just kind of go round and round. Stop it, Jody.
you got it. And I'm from the pizza capital of the world in New Haven. So
You look like a pizza. Yeah.
Thank you. Did you know much about how the world of wrestling worked at that time? Being,
Well,
being the son of him?
yeah, I mean, look, there was so when you say how the world of wrestling worked, when you talk about what was really going on in the ring and
Right,
what the true scoop on professional wrestling was. No, I didn't know that until I was, I don't know, maybe 8, 9 years old or something.
right,
And it was hard because I mean, I traveled a lot with my dad when I was a kid, and my mom. We were on the road and we'd go places. And one time in particular, I mean, it sits in my head pretty strongly. So my mom and I are sitting. I don't know where my brother was. Maybe we just left him back in the hotel room. I didn't like him a lot, and especially once it became so damn good that I couldn't even match up to him. So I ignore him to this day. So my mom and I are sitting towards the back of the audience, and my dad's in the ring. Somebody else was in the ring. My dad knocks the guy out of the ring, and the guy goes out of the ring. Now my dad's standing. It was a gimmick that used to happen back in the day. So you'd stand at the ropes and you'd be looking over. You'd be trying to look, see where the guy is. And the referee would be pushing you back. Well, the reality is the guy was going underneath the ring. And so the guy would go underneath the ring, and you'd be sitting there, you'd be sitting there as a heel. You're like looking for the guy, and your referee's pushing you back, trying to let the guy come in, but the guy had already gone under the ring. Now the guy comes up from the other side of the ring, and he sneaks up behind you, and he waylays you, and the crowd goes nuts. Well, my dad was a bad guy, so of course everybody's like sitting pretty quiet, and the referees. And at the top of my lungs as a little kid, I'm like, Dad, he's under the ring. He's coming up on the other side. And my mom's like, shut the hell up, you little shit. I didn't know.
That, yeah, you didn't know. You didn't know.
I didn't.
So what made you, or not what made you, but what around what time did you decide that that's what you wanted to do? You wanted to become a professional wrestler, and you trained under your father and Karl Gotch.
Yeah, I actually worked with a lot of different guys. I mean, so first and foremost, why did I, when was that moment that I knew that I wanted to be a professional wrestler?
Yep.
I always knew that I was going to do it. I wasn't the guy who wanted to be a professional wrestler. I just did it. And I
Mhm.
had a great time doing it, and I enjoyed it, and I still love the sport, and I love a lot of the connections that I made, and some of the guys in the business that have been some of my best friends. And to
Right,
this day, we all stay pretty close. So,
right.
you know, I knew I wanted that, but I didn't want to be a pro wrestler.
Mhm.
My brother from the time he was a kid, I mean, he was gonna make sure that he didn't do much of anything else until he got his shot in the business. And he was probably, I don't know, 31, 32 years old before he got his shot. It was
Mhm.
about that time that my dad was gone. I mean, my dad was on the verge of, he had cancer at the time. So he never really
Right,
got to see my brother in his heyday, which is a shame. He would have loved that. Um, so my brother knew, a lot of guys go down that path to break in and do whatever. I knew that I really didn't have to break in, that I was going to have a spot somewhere. Um, and I did, but I didn't want it full time. I never did. I was one of those guys that just had to do 15 other different things, 15 different ways from Sunday in order to stay satisfied at some level. And I also, as a kid, I thought that success was making a lot of money, so I was all geared up to make a fortune.
right,
And it wasn't going to happen through professional wrestling because for me in particular, I was 5'10" on a good day if I was wearing stilettos, and I was 200. On my best day when I was taking some enhancement stuff, I was 230. So, and
right,
it was a big man sport. And I recognized that at the time, and I knew that I wasn't going to be a Hogan. I wasn't going to be anybody who was going to make the serious bucks at that time. Later on,
right,
the junior guys, the smaller guys, not by any means smaller in their abilities or smaller in their performance, the ability to perform in the ring, but
right,
small in stature. They finally got their break, and that was partly due to my brother and Chris Benoit and Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio and all those guys who were smaller guys, but they just performed so well that finally the crowd and everybody had to recognize them. They made decent livings, but yeah, I'm belaboring this, but bottom line is I knew I wasn't going to make the kind of money I wanted to make in the business full time doing just that. So I had the best of all worlds. I mean, I got to travel. I worked with everybody and anybody. Um,
Yep.
I I I gravitated towards Japan. I did that very purposefully. It was for a couple main reasons. One is they were just so respectful of the boys. They were so respectful of anybody who did any kind of combat sports. The nation of Japan. Anywhere you
Mhm.
go, you were treated with respect. You were revered. They paid you every dime they said they were going to pay you. They took care of you. It was just a great place to work. So I'm like, what do I need to come here to the States for? And then the other piece of that is that everybody who was anybody here in the United States that was working on top, they all came to Japan. So we got to work with all those guys.
Right.
Why was I going to come here, bust my butt and not really get anywhere when I already had my spot over there? My brother, different deal. And thank God he ended up with a pretty decent career just because things evolved to where they let the junior heavy guys start to really work.
Yeah, it was around that time period, probably early to mid 90s. Well, I'd have to say mid 90s that it started shifting where
Yeah.
like the heavyweight style, started shifting. And I guess the gigantic guys were kind of phasing out in a bit. But I mean, there was still, some sort of need for them, but the junior heavyweights really took off. And still to this day, it's like evolved so much compared to
Yeah.
was even then. And, your brother, Eddie, Chris, like you all said, like those guys were very innovative at that time period
I mean,
to in
I go around to some of the independents, and I could go on about the independent promotions, and I'd probably get a lot of heat for it. But I go to the independent shows sometimes. I look and I think, I just want to take half those guys and get them a good meal.
well, it's funny you say that because it's I go to a lot of independents in my area. Uh, Mr. Mario Mancini, Paul Roma, they own a group here in Connecticut, and I've become pretty friendly with those guys and a lot of their talent. And some of them are just like they need to eat a little bit. They need to eat a few cheeseburgers, put on a little bit more
Well,
weight.
besides learning how to work, but
Yeah.
that's
Well,
yeah,
they actually they won't put their kids out there until they're actually
yeah.
decent. So they've been at that professional level.
I will. I mean, I recognize my own um, asshole type nature when it comes to looking at people and judging their work.
Yep.
Uh, because I've seen so many greats that I mean, everything's a comparative deal. So if I watch you in the ring and you're working an independent show, I'm not thinking anything other than the comparison between you and everybody I've ever seen that's good, and 99.9% of the time, you're going to fall short of the mark because I'm never going to find a lot of the guys. I'm never going to go to one of the independent shows and see a Dynamite Kid.
Yep. One of the best, like
Yeah.
ever.
Or my
Yeah.
brother, or my brother, or
Yeah.
Chris. You know,
Yeah.
forget the other stuff with Chris in ring.
Yeah. I mean, I'm still a huge
The
fan
Funks.
of,
Yeah, the
yeah,
Funks,
the
Terry
funk.
and Dory. You know,
Yep.
just
Yeah,
yeah, the best of the best, man.
absolutely. So, before 1985, it's kind of difficult to dig into your career a little bit, especially online. But we're showing that you went to Mexico in 1979 as Karl Gotch Jr. How did that come about, and what was that like?
Um, well, I got asked to run drugs across the Gulf of Mexico back then. It was now the Gulf of America. No, I'm just kidding. I'm
I was
kidding.
going to say,
I'm kidding. Thank God Trump wasn't in office because I'd be blown up. Um,
yeah,
no, so Carl had a relationship with Flores, who was one of the promoters in Mexico, and it was a good relationship. And Carl asked me, he goes, "Hey, I can get you in Japan if you want to go to Japan." I was actually up in the Carolinas. I was going in and out. I was refereeing. I wrestled a little bit, but barely anything at all.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and so mostly refereeing. And Carl asked me if I wanted to go to Mexico, and so I said, "Yeah." I was trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life. I hadn't been to pharmacy school yet. How old? I don't remember how old I was. So this was 80. Yeah, I didn't go to pharmacy school after. So this was 80. This was 78 when I went. The
Yeah.
year my daughter, yeah, the year my daughter was born. So 78, I went to Mexico City. So
Okay.
I was trying to figure out, I brand new daughter, wife, trying to figure out how I'm gonna make ends meet and provide for family. And that's when Carl said, "Hey, I can get you to Mexico if you want to go." I'm sure. I was up in the Carolinas, so my dad got me in with Abe Jacobs from New Zealand, who was a tag team partner of Don Curtis.
Hmm.
Just a phenomenally nice guy, just a super nice guy. And he worked with me for a while in ring to get me prepped and ready to go over there. Although it really didn't prepare me because he wasn't showing me lucha style. It was it was still still American. Um, it was still the American style of wrestling that he was doing,
Okay.
that he was showing me how to work. So when I got there, there was a bit of a disconnect in doing some things that they just do so differently down there. I did my best. I had a great time. I was there for, I don't know, about 4 months, I guess, something along those lines.
Yep.
And Carl, when I went down, Carl looks at me and goes, "Hey, if you want, I'd like you to use my name." So I went down there as Karl Gotch Jr. I think I'm the only guy that Carl's ever allowed to use his name. And he asked me, which was a big honor at the time for me. And my dad didn't mind. Yeah, I was worried that my dad looked at me and goes, "Yeah, you're going, I'm your dad. You're going to," but he was like, "Yeah, go ahead." He was so easygoing when it came to that stuff. So I went to Mexico, and that was really where I ran my first, you know, significant time in the ring, because everything else was intermittent.
Right. Oh, how close were your dad and Carl? Were they
Oh,
very close?
very
Yeah.
close. Until later on in life, they had a little bit of some issues later on in life, towards the end of my dad's life. Um, But yeah, I mean they were close. Carl always said that. So they were up in Minneapolis. They were working. I think they were working for Vern. Carl had just come in. My dad was up there, and Carl Carl had a reputation already before he even got started here in the States. So a lot of the guys were kind of avoiding him, or they didn't want to deal with him. And my dad walked up. This is Carl's story. My dad walked up to him in the dressing room and said, "Hey, if you want, I'm gonna go grab a bite to eat afterwards. If you want to come with me." And from that point on, they became really good friends. So
Yeah.
you know, Carl loved my dad, and my dad loved Carl. The business that time, a lot of these guys were so close, and the reason for it then was because, again, it's the territory times. You're in cars. You were in cars for you weren't on planes. You were in cars. You were in cars for 8 hours going someplace, or yeah,
Yeah. It was a different time period for sure.
different time. And they were all my dad, and my dad and Bob Orton Sr., Randy's grandpa. Bob
Right.
Orton Sr., Don Curtis, Jacob Groby, who was Hans Mortier, just all the best of friends and just enjoying their lives. Yeah, good, good times in the business back then. Not
Yep.
making the kind of money they make now, but yeah, they made up for it with a lot of stories.
Lots of books, lots of documentaries being made these days based
Oh,
on those stories. Oh
yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
But none of what really went down with a lot of these guys on the road will ever translate well enough into a book or a yeah you
Right.
you just can't make that leap because
Right.
it was just amazing times and some just unbelievable stuff that went down with these guys while they were on the road.
Yeah. Let's see. In 1985, you went to the shoot promotion UWF in Japan. Now, what was it like working there? Did you have amateur experience at all? I forgot to
Yeah,
ask you that.
yeah. I started wrestling amateur when I was 7 years old.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And
So
then,
so my first wrestling coach was a guy by the name of John Heath. He was a promoter in Sarasota, but he also coached wrestling. So he was my first wrestling coach. I was 7. Then I stayed with him on and off, and then when I got to high school, right before high school, Masao Hattori, who became fairly well known as a manager and a referee, was helping to book Japan and stuff like that. Masao was a national champion. Um, Come on, not freestyle, but Greco.
Greco-Roman.
It was a national champion Greco Japan, and then he went to the Worlds. I think he placed. I'm pretty sure he placed in the Worlds, and then he ended up in Tampa. And I knew he was coming here, so I started training with him. And then after that, that's when Carl came to town. And I had him come out to University of South Florida one time to watch me while Sal was training me. And besides telling me that he thought I was the shits, he then agreed to train me.
Nice.
Carl had a way with words.
Sounds like it.
Yeah.
So, did you enjoy going to UWF at all?
Oh, I loved it. Yeah, that was great. Well, and here's so because I had already been with Carl for a while at that point, not a while, I've been with him for a long time. You know,
Right.
busting my ass on becoming a submission wrestler. Now,
Right.
everybody says catch as catch can, but we were just we were wrestlers and we did submissions, and Carl worked hard with me, and I spent almost 7 years every single day. Didn't take any time off and busted my ass. So, but I could never really use that in anything other than training with guys in gyms. We had Olympic champions come through. We had world champions. I had the chance to be on a mat with the best in the world, but it was in a gym because there was no place for submission wrestling. There were no catch tournaments back then. So when something finally appears that kind of mimics what we were doing, I just thought as a natural thing, man, that's me, man. That's my fit right there. So
Right.
I had a good time going over there and doing it. I remember. I think it was my first match. I went against this guy Yamasaki, and I walked out of the ring going, "Oh, that was fun."
Uh, did you work a tag match there as well? Is that correct? Or
I
in Fujiwara and Keto?
Oh yeah,
There's a
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
And I think was I with Sayama?
I think Super Tiger. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, Sayama
Oh yeah,
Satoru
yeah, yeah.
Sayama.
Sorry,
Yeah,
bad.
Super Tiger. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'm
Between the
not
two of us, we can make almost a full brain.
also full sentence. I'm getting old. Sometimes my brain slips a little bit. So
Tell me
yeah.
about it.
So, um, did you have a chance to go to UWFI as well?
Yeah,
Either that was in the night. Was that the later '80s or earlier '90s that it started?
man. This is where. So I have a pretty good mind still, but when it comes to the sequence of things and the actual dates of things, hard for me
Yeah,
because I tell people all the time I was doing so many things because wrestling was just a piece of my life. I mean, I graduated pharmacy school in '83.
uh
Yeah, graduated pharmacy school in '83. I was I was doing research in Department of Anatomy at the med school at University of Florida. I was doing research at the Department of Endocrinology at USF, and then I worked in the neurophysiology department under a professor at USF for a while. So I was doing bench research. I was raised in a family. I was a musician. I was a professional musician for a while. I mean, I had so many things going on that my life, in a very good way, but
yeah,
sometimes a frustrating way, is it's a blur.
yeah. Well, now you're talking about music. So, what kind of music were you playing? You're a professional musician. What were you doing?
We were a cover band.
Okay.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
we had one guy. We had one guy that we hired to do keyboards. He was a very
Yeah.
young kid. We were all young kids. We were coming out of high school, and then we played for a few years afterwards, and eventually joined the union and played some clubs in town. But we had, we the only thing we ever did that was anything. Um, Come on, there was anything next to our music was we hired a kid who was a piano player, and he actually played for the Kids of the Kingdom, Disney World.
Okay.
And
Yep.
if I could liken him to anybody, it would be Neil Sedaka. I mean, he had that kind of voice and he had that kind of skills, writing skills, music writing skills. And we did some of it, but most of the stuff we did was cover. And
Yeah.
we did a lot of big bands because we had a horn section. So we did a lot of Chicago. We did a lot of Blood, Sweat, and Tears. We did some Tower of Power. I don't know if you remember them back in the day.
I worked in a record store for 30
Oh,
years.
okay.
Part-time.
I worked at Camelot Music for a while here. And
Nice.
there was record. In fact, I was working there the day that Elvis died.
Oh, wow. That's actually my mother's birthday. So,
The day that Elvis died.
yeah, he died on my mom's birthday. Yep.
Oh, wow.
So I think she was 22, I think, at the time.
Oh,
Yeah. Yep.
yep.
Um, yeah, so that the working in a record store for 30 years really opened me up to various different kinds of music. Got my interest in becoming a DJ, actually. So I was a DJ on community radio for a while, public radio, and now I'm looking to seek it out. I mean, I've done it professionally as well. So I'm looking to return at sometime soon. So it's been
Great business, fun stuff. Well, I mean, we had a really good group. We had some great vocals,
yeah.
and our horn section just really popped and yeah, nice. It was fun. I miss
That,
those. I miss those days probably as much as miss the wrestling stuff.
yeah. Let's see. Can you tell me about working Sunshine Wrestling? That was down in Florida as well. And I think you hold on one second.
Sun Coast.
Yeah, was it Suncoast? Yeah, I think I wrote
I
it down.
wasn't I wasn't around much. I wasn't around much for the Sun Coast stuff.
No. Yeah, that was in Florida. And I think you worked Rusty Brooks and Red Roberts.
Yeah,
Remember?
I mean, and I still stay in touch with, I still stay in touch with Red. Rusty, of course, has passed. We
Yeah,
uh
yeah.
we had Global Wrestling Alliance for a while.
Yep.
Um, that ran. We were, I did a lot of outlaw type stuff back in the day.
Yeah.
My dad was on the outs with Eddie Graham here in Florida for a long time, and
Yeah.
we ended up getting some backers, and we went against him in a number of ways, and um, yeah,
Yeah.
I did a lot of the outlaw stuff, which kind of kept me, which also kind of kept me off the card for the for the bigger promotions. When you're fighting
Right.
people, they tend not to want to hire you and put you in any good position. Like when we went
Yeah.
up to Knoxville, we were going against the Fullers and the Welshes, and we had a great crew, phenomenal crew. So once again, I had the opportunity. I worked against Bob Orton Jr. I worked against Randy Savage. I worked against Bob Roop. Um,
Was that for the Paphos ICW? Was that for
no,
that?
Papa's ICW was right before that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I wasn't sure if
But
that.
Papa's, I mean, Lanny and Randy both were around when we were in Knoxville at the time.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Did you ever? Okay, so somebody actually asked me to ask you this question. Did you ever get to work for the Savoldi's at all in Florida?
Who?
The Savoldi's?
No,
You never got a chance to work with them? Okay.
no.
All right. That was a because I know they ran down. Actually, they ran all over the place for crying out
Yeah.
loud.
I
Uh,
know. Look, I obviously know who they are.
yeah.
Um, the one thing about the States, especially during during the territory years, was
Mhm.
that if you were working certain territories, there was a possibility you were never gonna know who was somewhere else. Never have a
Right.
chance to work against them, not even know who the heck they were. Um,
Right.
my dad my dad had a hell of a career, and there were people from different places in this country that he never ran into. And
Yeah.
yet, if you talk to people from that area, they're like, "Oh, he was the biggest thing in our area," and maybe somebody would mention the name to my dad. My dad like, "I don't know who he is," and it
I,
struck you funny because my dad Boris Malenko been in the business since the mid '50s. You don't know who this guy is? No, because it's sort of I liken it to this. So I used to go to, I went to University of Florida. I was at the pharmacy school and doing research at the Department of Anatomy at the med school. So I tell people I'm at UF, and people go, "Oh my, I've got a cousin at UF." Like, yeah, along with 25,000 other people. I don't know who the freak your cousin is. But
yeah.
you're a University of Florida. But you're a wrestler. Don't you know everybody? No. Yeah.
Yeah. So you were going to college and wrestling at the same time? And
When I was in college,
yep.
when I was in pharmacy school, and I have to remind my daughters of this on every once in a while because they think that I just kind of scooted through and things came upon us um, by God's good graces. Although it was God's good graces, but um, yeah, I was at the College of Pharmacy. I was doing research at the Department of Anatomy at the med school. I was working as a pharmacy tech part-time at Gresham Drugs in Gainesville. I was wrestling for Don Curtis and Louis Tillett up in Jacksonville. So we'd run some of the shows up in North Florida, and then we'd do TV in Jax. I was selling fiberglass textured. I was selling fiberglass textured coating and aluminum siding for a company here in Tampa. So I do that on the side. I was coming back on weekends to Tampa because my wife at the time lived here, and my daughter, they lived with my mom. So my mom and dad. So then I would come back to Tampa each week. And then when I got back here, my dad got me a job helping uh, pipe fitters, pipe welders, pipe fabricators who would go out to the phosphate mines. Now these are above ground mines, and
Right.
they would redo the pipes, and so I would help put up scaffolding, and I would do that. I would do that for a day or two when I would come back, and then I turned back around and I go to pharmacy school and had 15 jobs up there. So yeah,
That sounded like you were just damn busy. Like seriously. I don't know how you made it.
I I don't know. I'm
Or
here.
maybe you didn't even sleep much. I don't know. But
It was fun.
yeah, yeah. You won the All Japan Junior Heavyweight Championship twice.
I
What
was, I was,
about that?
I was, they liked me and they asked me if I wanted to have a belt.
Oh, that's it.
Yeah, I've only won, um, I think I won bingo once.
Okay.
Yeah, you don't win belts.
Right.
I got some hot buttons.
Yeah.
So if you want to go through my hot buttons, call everybody a legend, call everybody a superstar, call everybody a movie star, you know, talk about winning the world title, so many times. Nobody won. If half the guys who won the world title, would have had to really win the world title, they would never had a world title. Not saying that there weren't great hands in the ring, but
Right.
yeah.
Yes. It's I don't want to
And
insult them, but
I get heat for that sometimes, but yeah,
no,
I'm a
I
realist.
understand. But yeah, you're looking at it realistically, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think in this world and especially nowadays, people start believing their own hype.
Yes.
Um, yeah, know your role, know your role, know your place, know what you've
Well,
done, feel comfortable in it, and don't embellish. You don't need to. If you're good at what you do, you don't need to blow smoke up your own ass. Pardon me.
yeah. No, you're good. You're good. Two guys that were I really loved as a tag team. Doug Furnas and Dan
Oh,
Crockett, a
yeah,
Phil LaFon. Let's talk about these guys because I was a huge Doug Furnas fan. I watched him in Continental, watched him in Japan. His stint in WCW, I thought he was a fantastic, fantastic wrestler. Of course, he did a short stint in WWF as well.
he was a fantastic. Doug was a fantastic athlete.
Yes,
He
absolutely.
just was an amazing athlete. From his days playing ball at University of Tennessee. Um, yeah, I'm not sure. When he did when he did the Bronco thing, he went to Denver.
Right,
Uh, I think he got hurt if I'm not mistaken, but that didn't pan out. But he rode bulls. He it was just a Doug Furnas at 250 pounds could stand still in the middle of a room somewhere and then just do a back tuck, which means as opposed to a back flip, you're doing a back tuck, so you're landing on your feet, right?
right.
250 pounds with legs the size of freaking tree trunks, Doug Furnas could go boop boom and land back on his feet. You're like, how the hell do you do that? You're not. That's against the laws of physics. You can't do
Figured it
that,
out.
but you
Yeah,
just did it. Yeah. And
yeah,
not to mention that he was just one of my best friends.
right.
Um, yeah,
Yeah, and I'm
I
surprised
miss
that he
him.
passed at a young age because it's very sad. I mean, it would have been great to see him a little bit further. You know what I mean?
Uh,
And grow the professional wrestling.
yeah, I spent some time with him. I went and stayed at his house a few times when he was fighting his illnesses and stuff like that. And he was just we were actually talking about going to China just right before he passed, which sucked because I would have loved to have gone with him.
Right.
But we stayed, his all his friends up in Knoxville, in the Knoxville area, his ex-wife. Um, we just all got together recently, and we had a memorial get together gathering, and printed. I've got the shirts. We printed shirts showing him on the front with his brother. You know,
Yeah.
in University of Tennessee gear. So yeah,
Nice.
Doug was a super great guy. I used to love being on the road with him. He was a great training partner because especially if you were going to do squats, there was nobody better to push you in a squat rack than Doug Furness.
Yeah. I mean, he was jacked.
Uh,
He was really big.
he was always in great shape. Doug was the most strict. You know, it, it's so it's so funny when people look at all the subtle ways to try and swerve the system to get in good shape or to do whatever. But Doug did the two basic things. One, he trained hard as hell, and two, he ate almost perfectly. He
Perfect.
ate the same stuff constantly. It was I'd just be looking at him like, don't you get tired of eating that crap? Nope. He'd have a big bowl and he'd have rice and he'd have some veggies and some his protein or whatever. A little bit of um artificial sweetener
Okay.
and be in a bowl and he'd sit and he'd eat that bowl all day long. My
Wow.
God, I'd be sitting in Kentucky Fried Chicken in Japan, grease, with grease coming down my shirt. And the funniest thing was sometimes he'd come by and I'd be sitting somewhere eating and I'd be eating crap, and he'd look in, he'd open the door, he'd look in like this, he'd go, close the door, and he'd just he'd walk on down the street. I'm like, okay, well, whatever, and then I just start eating again.
What about you and Dean teamed up against the British Bruisers, Johnny Smith and Dynamite Kid. We talked about Dynamite Kid earlier,
Yeah,
and obviously he was doing a tour of Japan after him and Davey split up. Davey, I think, returned to WWF at the time, right? If
I
I'm
think
mistaken.
so. Yeah.
And he, basically Johnny Smith teamed up with them to form the British Bruisers. And what was it like meeting those guys? Have you met the Dynamite Kid before, right? Wrestled him before, I believe.
Oh
You-
yeah, before that, sure, sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't know him before Japan, but the first time I met him, was an interesting deal because, and it solidified with me who Dynamite Kid was for me. And
Hmm.
no matter what anybody says, people tell me about other people, and I always go, okay. I kind of put off what people will tell me because I want to experience somebody myself. And if they're good to me, they're good. And then if you tell me that this guy's a jerk or this guy's that, like, fine, you may think he is, but he's okay with me. So a lot of people have their comments about Dynamite.
Hmm.
But one of the first times I met him on the bus, and he had an old Olympic shirt on. It was a long sleeve shirt. It was from 19. It was the London Olympics. I don't remember what year that was, but it was the London Olympics, and it was a very colorful Adidas shirt. And it was probably printed for the Olympics, and it was a deal. So anyway, I got on the bus. I meet him for the first time. I said, "Man, that's a really nice shirt." He goes, "Oh, thank you, thank you." That was it. And we really didn't talk because he was sitting on the back of the bus. I always sit towards the front. I sit a couple rows behind Stan, and Doug was always right across from me. My brother was right in front of me. And so I get back to the hotel that night. So we had the matches. I get back to the hotel that night. I go into my room. I'm getting all cleaned up, getting ready to go to bed. Knock on the door. Notice how I did that. Knock on the door. And I like, who the hell's at my door? I open the door and Dynamite's standing there. Didn't say a word. He had his shirt. He had the shirt in his hand.
Hmm.
Throws the shirt into my room, and then just walks on down the hallway. And I went, thanks. He gave me the shirt. Dynamite gave me the shirt off his back.
Right.
And
Wow.
that's how he was with me. And we spent a lot of time out, um, out and about on the town, and did a lot of stuff together. And yeah, he was great.
Nice. That's probably the nicest story I ever heard about. No, no
I think
offense or anything, but
this,
just reading his book and hearing other stories from other people, he was not the kindest person.
yeah, I mean, I think there was and again, this isn't. I always feel weird saying stuff because sometimes it sounds like me, putting myself over, and maybe sometimes it is. Carl had told him previously that he said to Dynamite, I think it's in his book. It is in his book. Carl had told him that there was nobody who could beat me on a mat, and so he had a respect for me. He wasn't he had multiple feelings about Gotch, but he knew Gotch was legit.
Mm.
So when Carl told him that kind of set a respect thing up for me with him. And then I
Right.
respected him because I knew who he was and what he had done in the past for the business, especially with his run with Super Tiger. So, there was a mutual respect. And it started from square one, and it stayed that way.
Nice.
And I think that's why I never experienced the you know,
Hazing.
getting my
Yeah.
bag shit in, or
Uh,
or getting in my room and there's something living in my under my sheets.
yeah. No, if I think so. Obviously, you read his book. It sounds like, and it just there was some wild. So I got it when it first came out. So I'm going probably 20 some odd years ago. So it's been about that long since I've read it. But there was just some wild stories in that book. So coming from him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he lived
Yeah.
a he lived a crazy life.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. There's a kind of a documentary, a sort of documentary, I should say, about him through High Spots produced it a number of years ago. I guess they were trying to do a shoot interview with him, but it didn't work out. And then but just taking various conversations that they had with shoot interviews and then turning it into a documentary. And it's actually quite interesting to watch if
Yeah,
you've ever come across.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah,
And again, I tend to be really, I've got this myopic kind of thing where if I'm judging you, I'm judging you off of what I know about you, not off of what I hear or see or
right,
people are telling me. It's how were you with me? If you were with me, if you were okay with me, then you were okay with me. And
right.
I'd hear stuff obviously because I wasn't deaf or blind, but. He was Dynamite was good with me, and I thought highly of him.
Right. Oh, good.
And I had a great time with Dave. Davey was we a lot of ribs and funny stuff and good times.
Yeah, had the opportunity to meet him once or twice. He was very kind as well. So
Yeah.
this numbers of years ago. But also, you in Japan, you did. I guess you teamed with David Sammartino as well. Any stories about teaming with David, and what was it like teaming with him? And do you remember
Um.
much about it? I mean, he's pretty much
I,
all
yeah, I
disappeared.
really don't. I mean, I don't remember the tag team stuff with David. I mean, I obviously remember him being over there with me.
Yeah.
Um. He was only. I think he was only in and out the one time with me, or he might have been there twice, maybe. So
Hmm.
I got to know him a little bit, and we got along real well. And now I have to go back and look and see if I can find anything where there's a any kind of tag team between with him and I going against anybody. I don't remember that happening, but probably did.
I had to look it up to confirm it,
Yeah.
and I did.
Now I'm gonna have to look it up.
Yeah, yeah, because I had it in my notes because just from looking at something, and then I went back to double check it, and it was there. So I think it might be in your Wikipedia page. I'm not
Yeah.
100%
And
sure.
again,
Yeah,
he was really good with me. He was good friends with at the time he was good friends with Warrior. And
right.
so I remember discussions about that, and then he had some hard times going on with his dad at the time. So
Yep.
hopefully there was some kind of reconciliation later on. I would hope.
Yeah, that I don't know about. I've heard some stories about David and his time in WWF from a mutual friend, and it was not the most pleasant. I mean, from his
Yeah, I mean,
experience.
I think if you talk to enough people, you're going to find unpleasantries put out there about pretty much anybody and everybody.
Yeah. Yep.
There are some guys that are renowned, and everybody says they were a piece of crap. But for all of us, I mean, there's somebody that if you do anything long enough and you're visible enough and you're around enough people, there's got to at some point in time there's somebody who looks at you and goes, "You're a jerk," and then they tell everybody else you're a jerk.
Yeah.
Except me.
Do,
Everybody loved me.
yeah, it sounds it. Do you remember working the NAWA, which I believe was out of North Carolina? You and Dean teamed up there. I think I remember just one time teaming up there, and then they turned into South Atlantic. And I remember him going forward there.
Well,
At least
I don't remember. Yeah, that's my
I
famous
can't.
laugh. My famous laugh, and I even laugh at my own laugh, is when people ask me, I go, like, what is? I don't even think that qualifies as a laugh, but that's my laugh. And I make the face too. It's like,
No, I do. I did see that video of you guys teaming up there because I did get the TV up here, surprisingly. Uh,
yeah.
yeah, at the time period, it's very regional promotion. They were trying to get into the Carolina market where when WCW took over the NWA time
Yeah.
slot, stuff like that, they were trying to NAWA, aka South Atlantic Pro, tried to just basically bought out all the syndicated markets. And they went through multiple owners of the year over the years, and then were probably done within, I think, about 3 years. And it's very kind of, you know, Jim Crockett-ish type wrestling
Yeah.
product. Yeah. Now, what
Don't
about you? You talk about you did have a stint in the ECW, correct? Briefly.
A little bit. Yeah, I went in and out. My brother, again, because my brother wanted to do the
Yeah,
business. He was there. He had, I mean, my brother in ECW, especially his matches against Eddie Guerrero.
fantastic. Yeah,
Everybody wants to talk about classic matches. Classic
absolutely.
matches.
Yeah,
But their last match in ECW, just go pick that go pick that up somewhere and take a watch if you haven't watched it.
Right.
The
If
crap,
absolutely, I got
great.
the. I will say that I have the what is it? The Malenko Guerrero Classic DVD. So it's just three
Oh,
matches
okay.
of the three matches of the two of them together.
Yeah.
Was it just not for you to go forward, or you just not interested, or were you just not
Oh,
asked?
it's like it's like I've already said. I just had multiple interests, and
Right.
I didn't want to pigeonhole myself. I didn't want to pigeonhole myself into any one thing, i.e., the wrestling business. So I
Right.
figured, if I can do it all, and
Yep.
I can enjoy myself, and I can make a buck, and do what I need to do to support a family, I was game, and it
Yeah.
I knew that I wasn't going to be able to make a living. At least at that time, I was not going to be able to make a good living in the business, the kind of living I needed to make. I was looking to make a good living.
So you talked about watching today, mostly independent so far, but do you still watch like the current product as far as mainstream wrestling goes? And what's your opinion?
I catch bits and pieces of it.
Yeah.
Um, here's my take, and this is me. I don't. You get a lot of the old timers to say, "Oh, this, that's terrible, or that's terrible, or that's terrible." I mean, there are some basics, and that's what I do when I go to do seminars. I kind of get down to the basics, but just
Right.
short of that, people like what they like, and it's a preference thing. I always laugh at these people who go, "Well, this should be red, or this should be blue, or this should be that, or this." That's preference. It doesn't need
Right.
to be any of those things. It needs to be whatever people want to go see, and if they want to go see it and they put butts in the seats, who am I to say it's a lousy product? It's just not my product. You know,
Right.
it yet, and in the same breath, I sit there and I recognize the athleticism and the gymnastic uh, capabilities and the just the tremendous performance level that these guys have. It's just not it's just not put together in a way in which I really enjoy it because I'm the old school grab a headlock and make the crowd go nuts for 20 minutes without doing much of anything. I
Right.
I've watched that for years. I watched all these old timers not going bing 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 bing, but doing their a slow burn and
Right.
just I have moments where I've been in crowds watching my dad or watching Wahoo or so many of the greats of days gone by and barely do much of anything, but do it with such an intensity and such a fire and such legitimacy that the believability was there for everybody in the seats of that audience, and that place would just go nuts. And nobody dove off a top rope, and nobody did a Frankenstein or a summer, or corkscrew. I mean, none of that was done, and yet,
Right.
everybody, there wasn't a person sitting down in the audience. In an arena of 15, 20,000 people, there wasn't a person in their seats.
Right.
So I like that.
Yeah. Me too. Yeah.
Preference.
That's
Preference.
my style of professional wrestling, to be honest with you. I,
And 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 when you do it right,
hmm
I don't care what the people in the audience think they know or what they believe, you make them believe. And if people tell me that can't be done anymore, and I'm getting ready to do a bunch of seminars and I'll have this discussion with everybody, if you think kayfabe is dead, you're an idiot. Kayfabe's not dead. We just don't know how to bring it back. And you bring it back by being a certain worker in the ring and doing things in a very believable way. And I have a story, and it's one story that proves that, and it proved it to me, and it surprised me. I I've been telling this lately because it just kind of hit me recently. I was working against Randy, Macho Man. I was working against Savage, and I go to throw him in the corner. No, he goes to throw me in the corner. I reverse it. He takes the corner, takes it hard. I charge you because when I throw you in, I'm following up on you. I'm not standing there waiting for you. I'm following up on you. And I'm following right behind him. He puts his knee up. I take, boom, and I take a bump. I splatter. And I land on the ground and I stay there for a split second. And you can just feel the whole crowd go, woo, like this, right? So I get back in the dressing room afterwards. My dad comes up to me. He goes, Hojo. He used to call me Hojo. Hojo. Because we used to travel and we were at Howard Johnson's a lot and they had Hojo Cola. So I was nicknamed Hojo. Say, Hojo, you okay? Like, what do you mean, am I okay? You okay? Did you hurt yourself? No, I didn't hurt myself. I was, Pop, I was working. Oh, aha, aha. So the point in all that is this meager, modest, um, middle card guy with Randy Savage in a ring for a split second caused a guy who had been in the business since 1955, who had wrestled everybody, who knows everything there is about the business, who trained some of the greats. It made him think for a second that it was legit. It made him for a second doubt what he saw. I did that with I didn't do it, but I just did it by doing the right thing in the ring. And by default, my dad picked up on that and he believed for a split second. If you can do that with Boris Malenko, you tell me first, you tell me with a straight face that you still can't do that in a ring for a crowd that hasn't been in the business for 50 years.
Right.
I I would beg to defer all day long. And even I and the same thing with me. If I'm watching a match and I see something really good and really strong and intense, even I'll sit there and I'll go, like this. I know what I see. I've been in the business since I was born. But even with me, for that split second, I go, ooh, shit. You can still do it, man. You can still do it. But you got to want to do it, and it's got to translate well to the crowd, and it's got to be somebody's preference out there to bring that back at some level. And every once in a while, you do see, you see guys have great matches. And
Yep.
the funny thing to me is everybody talks about how you can't do it the way it used to be done, but the matches that really stand out are the matches where people do it the way it used to be done. Where they
Right.
let people, where they give the people the time on TV to really ply their trade and do it the right way.
Right.
And those are the matches that everybody points to, saying that was the greatest match ever,
Yep.
because of the way it used to be done. Yeah, strange business.
Yeah. Yeah. So you just mentioned you have some seminars coming up. Do you want to point where are they? Point people in that direction, I guess you should say. I should
Over
say.
there, and then there's one over there.
Yeah. Just
I'll be doing so Bobby Fulton and his group run a fan fest and matches in come on, Chillicothe. I never
somewhere in Ohio. It's somewhere in
in
Ohio.
Ohio. Yeah, in Ohio. So I'll be going there, and Bobby has me doing a seminar the last day there. So I'll be doing a seminar there. I'm doing a seminar in Vegas. Now that's a pro wrestling seminar. I'll be doing a submission seminar out in Vegas. And
Okay.
then I head back. Then I head over the pond. So I'm doing a seminar at the Snake Pit. So at the end of June, I'm doing a seminar at the Snake Pit in Wigan, and then I go up to London. I have a seminar there. Then I have a seminar in Italy. Two seminars in Italy, one in Rome and one in Pisa. And then supposedly there's somebody over in Austria that I might go do a seminar with, and it's a possibility that JBL might come with me because yeah, we have this thing where I've sort of kind of been helping him train a little bit.
Okay. Cool. Cool. Is there
And
anything else you want to throw out there before we wrap it up?
nah, it's been fun. I enjoy doing these things. I like doing this not for anybody other than for me because
Right.
it reminds me of things that sometimes I forget about. And most of the things that I've forgotten about are pretty good things, and I don't want to keep them forgotten. So brings
Right.
back brings back memories. Like you jog my memory on a couple things.
Yeah. Now I got to go back and watch some stuff now. So you making me second guess my questions, my notes. So I want to say thank you very much for joining me
Oh, my
here today.
pleasure.
I really appreciate you coming in and having this conversation. I'd love to have you back sometime.
Yeah, whenever you want, give me a call.
All right. Thank you
Okay.
very much.
Thank you, man. Take it easy.